Not so fast. Hello everyone, welcome to EA40 and welcome to a new episode of 2 Cents on 4 Wheels, where in this one we're going to talk about the new Cannonball record that has been broken and talk about if it really counts. I think it does, but it deserves a bit of a note. So if you were on Facebook at the right time in early April 2020, you would have seen a post on Facebook containing a picture of a white Audi A8 with the trunk popped open and 2 big fuel tanks in the trunk. And the caption for the post was like, supposedly there's a new record of 26 hours and 38 minutes in town. I ended up messaging someone to ask if it was a real record. I couldn't quite get confirmation, but then I saw a video the next day on VinWiki saying that yes, the record is real. And in that video, Ed Bullion gave his thoughts on the record and mentioned that yes, it's real. He was even watching it as it was going on, watching the satellite feed. So the record was legitimate. So before I go over the 2 camps of thoughts, let's talk about the Cannonball run for a moment. Generally, it starts in New York and finishes in LA. More specifically, the traditional starting point tends to be the Red Ball Garage in New York City, and then the finishing point tends to be the Portofino in Los Angeles. That's generally how it's run in the traditional format. As far as the routes that you go in between, it doesn't matter in a way. It's kind of been established that you can kind of do whatever one works fastest for you, and sometimes a route that's fastest one time may not be the fastest one the next time. And like I said earlier, the whole event is illegal anyway, so there's no official sanctioning body. And with that, there are 2 camps of thought regarding this new record that has been set. One camp is like, okay, it's all fair game, the whole event is illegal anyway, they earned the record fair and square. The other camp that also contains some of the veterans are like, it's kind of fair, but not really. There deserves to be an asterisk with it. For the camp that talks about it being a fair game, other than the whole illegality of the event anyway, one thing they'll talk about is the level of help that's required for these runs. Back in 2006, Alex Roy and Dave Maher, they had a spotter plane while they were doing their runs. In 2013, Ed Bullion, Dave Black, and Dan Wong, they had a bunch of spotter drivers on the road, including one that I actually know. And then for the last record in 2019, Doug, Arne, and Berkeley, they had even more spotters for their run. One of the spotters even helped immensely on Doug, Arne, and Berkeley's run by having all the pumps ready for them as soon as they arrived at the gas station. I did see a funny comment related to that saying, oh, I'd like $500 on pump 3 please. Silly. And then who knows, in the future we could have someone else who takes those existing routes of help and basically amps it up even more by having even more spotter planes and even more ground spotters and more people even at the fuel pumps. Who knows? And then safety is a big deal regarding these Cannonball runs, because so far, despite all the fast driving that goes on and everything, there has been no accident during the Cannonball run that involved another vehicle that was not involved in the run. So technically now, the chances of colliding into a traffic vehicle are lower because there are fewer vehicles on the road. There are more trucks now, but overall traffic is down. So with the relatively loose rules to begin with, and then the safety aspect of supposedly it's better now, that's why a lot of people are saying that it's completely fair game and people are just salty because this won't happen again. So where does some of the other controversy come in, and where is the other camp being like, this deserves an extra note, come from? One possible consequence about this is the PR and social aspect for the car and Cannonball community, and there could be some serious ramifications to both communities. Right now we're living in a very unique time, and the news outlets, they're generally talking about something directly related to this new way of life, generally something like the death toll or the current number of cases or something super similar. But if they're not talking about that, they're talking about something else that's still related to this new event that's going on. And one thing that they've been talking about a lot is speed. A lot of people have kind of noticed that because there's less traffic, cars in general that are still on the roads tend to be going faster. And because anything related to cars and speed tends to make a pretty good story, a lot of the news outlets have been constantly reporting about it. You have some fringe reporters who are talking about it, and they constantly end up pressuring the police, or they ask them for statements like, hey, there are more people going a little bit quicker, what are you guys doing about it? At first, when this all was starting to happen, police weren't actually enforcing as much. They were basically trying to take a step back. And in most cases they still kind of are. However, they've kind of had to scale up patrols again because people are talking about it like, yo, you should do something about it. So if the news outlets get a bit bored and pick up on this, there's gonna be more talk about it, and police, they very well could get more pressured. And the general public, anytime they see like some kind of car going fast, especially a sports car or something, someone's gonna be like, oh, there's a cannonball run going on, when they don't really have a clue what it is. And something that many car enthusiasts know is that right now is pretty much the worst time to get into an accident, because emergency services and hospitals, everyone is stretched thin. So you really can't do anything too outlandish right now, because if you've been it, you're gonna be in a bit of trouble. In Ed Bullian's VinWiki video, he said, don't break the law while breaking the law. And the law that he was talking about breaking while breaking the law, if you know what I mean by that, is a stay-at-home orders. If you looked at the pictures of the Audi A8 that was used for the run, you would have seen that the license plate was blurred, but the bottom half of the license plate, or bottom corner or whatever, you saw a bit of yellow on it. That indicates that it's probably a Pennsylvania registration on that Audi A8. What that means, Pennsylvania residents are under a stay-at-home order, so yeah, they kind of broke that law too. And then people who aren't fully fans of this run are referring to the social responsibility aspect of it, only to an extent because it's a little bit ironic, and it's a case of, should they be doing these kind of runs when America is basically crippled? But they did do the run anyway, and they did it in conditions that we probably won't see for another lifetime. And so with that, I want to make a little bit of an analogy that kind of explains why I'm the one who's like, okay, there should be like a bit of an asterisk by this record run. If you know about track and field athletics, you'll know of two events called the 200-meter run and the 100-meter run. And those kind of events, along with all the other track and field events, they tend to be run outdoors in basically any weather condition except for lightning or something. One of the weather conditions that those events are run in is wind. And when it comes to wind, things can change a little bit depending on the actual conditions. Generally, when it's windy, the events are going to be run anyway. But it does get to a point of too much wind for records. If the tailwind during an event is greater than 2 meters per second, the times that are set during the event end up counting, and the standings, they end up counting. However, any record doesn't really count because the tailwind was deemed to provide too much of a boost. When it comes to these cannonball runs, of course everyone wants to wait for some of the best scenarios. The last run, it was done I think on a holiday weekend. People tend to want to do it at a time when traffic is the least. However, right now is super different. Times that we're probably never going to see for a very long time. And I equate that to being a huge tailwind, whereas like the previous record was more of like a mild tailwind that they calculated for, and it was kind of predictable. This one, the new one, it wasn't really predictable. Or maybe a more car related analogy is when Top Gear has their celebrity guests on to do a lap around their track. And they have one big leaderboard for it and all the fastest times, but you'll notice that they do have markings by a bunch of the names and times depending on the weather conditions. If it was completely dry, there's no marking or anything. If it was a little bit moist outside, they'll end up making like mildly moist or something like that. Or if it's downpouring very wet, or in one case, snow. Yes, there was a time when a celebrity had to run in snow. Of course, they were pretty much the slowest one, but they joked about making a completely separate category just for snow drivers. But you notice how they end up kind of marking a little bit differently, so you don't really compare someone who's running in heavy wet to the fastest driver like Ollie Murs, for example. So there is that difference, and that's something that can be marked down here. The current time that we're living in is completely different from anything that's been around before, and most likely different from anything that'll happen in the future. And so with that, that's why I think that yes, this record can kind of stand, but we're gonna have to call it something like the fastest time like during a pandemic or something like that. I don't think it's fully fair to mention this time alongside all the other times and just say this one was the best, no questions asked. So that was my opinion. I know people in the Cannonball community, they have their own opinions, but I want to know what you guys have for your opinions on this. Does this new time count? And if so, why do you think it does? Or do you think that it deserves a little bit of an asterisk or a side note being like not so fast? But thank you guys for watching this episode of 2 Cents on 4 Wheels. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I hope to see you on another video.